All right, now, $37 trillion currency reset just started. I say, without further ado, we jump right in and see what this gentleman brought us today.
America is trying to change the rules in the gold and cryptocurrency markets. They have a $35 trillion currency debt. They move it into crypto, into the cloud, devalue it, and start from scratch.
The US government has a problem. For decades, the
Like, honestly, I think that's such an amazing plan, especially like taking into account like everyone is like buying into the cryptos like an unbacked security based on digital prestige alone. I think it's wild, like that people don't see that. Yeah, sure. As long as people like buy into the pyramid scheme, like the price will rise. Like it's like only like trust, which like keeps up this currency. Yes, it's like similar to other currencies as well, because like trust is there. Though, when you look at how dynamic a government subsidized currency is, you will quickly find out that people can back their currency with gold or like real life values. And like this is the fascinating part about Bitcoin and crypto altogether. It's just backed by pure trust, nothing else. And like the price rises like as long as people buy in. Like when people sell, it looks different. Though yeah, like we will see what is happening there. Like the market is like always wild in that regard. It's quite like one of the most, like in my humble opinion, unpredictable fields that are out there, like the market. Alright, TC, BRB, whatever you do, I hope it's amazing. Good. Let's continue.
status of the US dollar as a global reserve currency has given the United States tremendous privilege. It's allowed the government to finance its massive debt pile at very low interest rates and to run persistent trade and fiscal deficits with, so far, very little consequence. But this privilege is showing signs of disappearing. The US dollar's share of foreign exchange reserves has just hit the lowest level in 30 years. The US government's interest rates are now hovering at around the highest levels of the last 20 years, breaking out of what had been until very recently an extremely steady downtrend. As a result, we've seen the US government,
which is like interesting, because like I assume that they do this like in order to circumvent a recession. I think like recessions are devastating, or like devastational, like altogether. You can like always see they always try to cling on to cling on to what they have. So it's like wild to observe that.
interest payments on the debt go from $500 million to $1.2 billion in just 5 years' time. So just interest payments are now equivalent to now over a fifth of the government's total revenues. This is a phenomenon that the European Central Bank has labeled as the debt doom loop, where the loss of confidence in a national debt leads to higher interest rates, which leads to budget problems, which in turn further impacts investors' confidence in the debt. But the US government believes it has a solution to this problem: a cryptocurrency reset, which they think could completely stop this phenomenon and potentially even reverse it, allowing the US government to continue spending with no consequence. To understand exactly what this big crypto reset actually is, we need to look closer at the government interest rates. This is the 10-year government interest rate, which is the benchmark for government bonds that most investors pay attention to, and it currently stands at around 4%, which means that anyone holding a 10-year government bond to maturity receives a 4% interest payment on it for 10 years. This interest rate essentially determines how expensive it is for the government to borrow money. A 4% interest rate is around the historical average of the 10-year government bond. Now, this interest rate is driven by three key forces. Inflation is one of the key factors that is taken into account by investors. Something called the discount rate, which is the short-term interest rate, which is set by the Federal Reserve. And finally, something called the term premium, which is essentially the confidence that investors have in US debt. We can rename this as the risk premium on US debt. Now, you might not have heard of it, but this risk premium is what could cause some real damage in the event of a debt doom loop scenario that we discussed earlier. And this is at the heart of the US government's plan. You can think of this risk premium basically as the added bonus interest on top of the other two factors. If investors have a high level of confidence in the stability of the debt, you're going to have a low term premium that allows the government to borrow at a cheaper rate. This term premium can even go negative. For instance, in 2019, it was at minus 1.5%. So confidence in US debt in 2019 was unbelievably high, and this allowed the government to borrow money at a cheaper rate and also making it easier to pay off its prior debt. If investor confidence is low, however, you're going to have a higher risk premium. And
like what I think would be like interesting how investor confidence is being calculated.
Historically, we've seen it go as high as 5% in the US. Typically, this only happens during periods of high uncertainty when there are big geopolitical risks or the government is spending recklessly. For example, the risk premium on Greek bonds in 2010 at the heart of the European debt crisis was above 15%. The historical average of the risk premium in the US is around 2%. Today, this is what the risk premium or the term premium looks like on a 10-year US government bond going back to the 1960s. The historical average is around 2%. Today, that risk premium is at 0%. So this is potentially a major risk that could cause government interest rates to jump higher if investors suddenly decide that US debt is becoming risky. If the risk premium were to just come back to its historical average,
which like also explains the recent developments within internal security, like within the USA. Like the reason why the government is like cracking down so hard on criminal organizations like MS-13 and like the cartels. Like I think this is just like reasonable, like that they do this currently in order to grant safety for the investors so that this is not happening, which like in a way counters the theory that they plan to basically turn this all around with cryptocurrency.
Of 2%, that would make today's 4% government interest rate jump up to 6%, which would have disastrous consequences on the government's budget, but would also impact things like mortgage rates and borrowing costs for businesses, which would probably be the nail in the coffin that finally pushes the US economy into a recession. This is obviously something that the government wants to avoid. So this is where their crypto reset fits in. You see, between 2000 and 2024, the US dollar represented at
I think it's like interesting, like when you look at recession, especially like take into account the current landscape of developments within the technological field. Hereby refer to AI. Your internet cut out. You're back now. Oh Jesus Christ! Yeah, well, welcome back, DC. Welcome back. I hope it stays stable now. Like, what would a recession do? Like, there are lots and lots of companies who are, like, in a way, enslaved to the banks, and they can't survive without like credit from the banks. And I think like default scenarios would be devastating in that regard, which would drive people away from jobs to being jobless. Like, I don't know, like how they plan to handle that. It's like, when you look at all that, like it would basically like even out the playing field, because like after the recession, like new business can like enter the market, like in a sense. Like it's wild for me to look at all that, like amidst the developments within the AI technology sector. Like we by now have credible resources which state that within the next decade we will lose 100 million job places within the US. Like how are they gonna address for that? Like what are they thinking? Like in that sense.
The very least 60% of global reserves. This strong international confidence has been key to keeping a lid on that risk premium despite quite high levels of government spending. And that was still the case until very recently. Just in 2023, we were still at 61% of international reserves denominated in US dollars. But over the course of the last year,
it's so unstable right now. He's having me fucking ass off about it. You know, like I low-key don't know. Like for me it's like fascinating. Like on one hand you have like people like memeing the living fuck out of like get a job and whatnot. Like on the other hand you have like the prospect that all that will be gone. Like our generations are in between. Meanwhile, they have like full pockets and sit on the money, as if this would count, like when you have a dark factory which basically outcompetes you. Like, what do you want to do with like all the paper you're sitting on? Like what the heck do they want to do with that? Like you have like super factories which basically like outperform everything. Like that they are there, like they are there already, like within China. It's a really interesting development, like which is like where you are well advised to like look at it and like basically find answers to it. Like yet to figure out like what are the implications in that regard.
Things have been shifting quickly. Today we're below 60% and dropping rapidly. One of the big driving forces behind this is that major foreign holders of US debt, like China and Japan, are selling. Both China and Japan were huge buyers of US treasuries between 2000 and 2022, and have recently turned into net sellers of US treasuries just in the last couple of years. This is a phenomenon that the US government has zero control over, but they are trying to potentially offset it through crypto. This is the market cap of stablecoins. These are digital dollars for anyone who wants to have an easier time transacting in US dollars without needing to pass through a bank. These stablecoins also have faster transaction times and lower fees. The market cap of stablecoins is now roughly $200 billion, having doubled from just 2 years ago. The reason that these are relevant is because in order for a stablecoin to be in circulation, it needs to be backed by a real US dollar. In other words, companies that supply stablecoins like Tether and Circle need to purchase US treasuries in order to provide stablecoins. So higher demand for stablecoins means higher demand for dollars. This is something the government understands and has recently passed legislation in order to regulate the sector and promote its growth. The only question is whether this plan can actually have a significant impact on US debt. So let's take a look at that. Tether and Circle are already among the world's largest holders of US Treasury assets with...
I think this is a genius business model. Jesus Christ. It's like actually like that interesting. Because the crypto market is like very easy to set up. So and the logistics can be countermeasured with bonds. Like, which is like the nice thing about it, and then you can like simply like instantiate a fee. Like introducing a stable coin within a market is a great business scheme.
Comparable holdings to Norway and Brazil's government. But this is a market that is growing incredibly quickly. The US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent believes that a $2 trillion market cap for stablecoins is a reasonable estimate. That would make stablecoin companies the world's largest holder of US treasuries, with larger holdings than both Japan and China's governments combined. This would completely offset any reduction in US treasury holdings that these governments might do. And this $2 trillion estimate has been validated by third parties like Standard Chartered that believes 2/3 of this growth will come from individuals in emerging markets, which
This is absolutely correct. Like I agree. Jesus Christ. What in the wake-up call? Damn.
is something that we are already seeing today, with Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and Eastern Asia witnessing 30% year-over-year growth rates in their stablecoin activity. These are parts of the world that are notoriously susceptible to having unstable monetary systems, and stablecoins provide individuals with access to somewhat of a stable currency, the US dollar. So stablecoins could indeed be a way for the US government to maintain the US dollar's global reserve status through individuals in rapidly growing emerging markets that are simply seeking a better medium of exchange, and so offsetting the deterioration of confidence that foreign governments like Japan and China have in the US. But this entire plan does have huge limits. Foreign investors only account for about 24% of all holders of US debt. Remember, the national debt now stands at over $35 trillion, and it's growing rapidly. So even if stablecoins were to grow to a $2 trillion market, this would only represent a fraction of the total debt pile. So yes, the government's crypto plan is a good one, but it's only going to have a positive effect on interest rates if it is accompanied by a sound government budget. If the government continues to spend recklessly, you're going to see more capital flow away from US treasuries and into assets like gold and Bitcoin that have been benefiting from the loss of confidence in US debt. And unfortunately, we don't think this theme is over. Gold has been on one of its strongest rallies in history, which is a clear sign from financial markets that currency debasement is taking place and that investors no longer believe that the dollar and dollar-denominated debt are an attractive investment. We've been long on gold at Bravos Research since 2023, riding almost the entirety of this bull market with our clients. And although we did recently sell all of our precious metal holdings because it is getting overextended, this is a part of the market that we're going to continue seeking exposure to over the coming months and even years. If you want to follow all of our trades and our exact macroeconomic strategy every step of the way, make sure you become a client at bravosresearch.com. Thank you for watching.
Amazing essay. I'm baffled, like especially the end. This was pure expertise. Nothing to add. God dang it! Wow, major shout out. Like basically, video link will be linked in the description. Give comment, like, subscribe. They're amazing. Yeah, and this was it for today. So grand business opportunity, stablecoin introduction. So without further ado, we will see us all in the next one. Love you guys on YouTube. So as usual, the next time, peace.